Fancy ships, intricate detail, and so much interactivity you will start bleeding out of your eyes. And prices that'll make your wallet bleed, for good measure. Still, Star Citizen is gearing up some big things in recent times, as it seems to be doing every year, but we barely ever get to see any of it actually materialize. With the combat mechanic rework appealing to more casual crowds and attempts at an actual game design implementation for the first time since the launch of Alpha. New UI rework for what, 19th time or something? But anyways, finally, the star map is getting a facelift as well, like an aging movie star with disposable cash and Botox addiction. And of course more ships and JPEGs to shake a stick at, and even an actual game getting released. Someday. And no, I mean the Squadron 42, the single player getting its finalized state or something. And yet, like a starving and parched man in a desert, finding a gemstone does very little to satiate the basic needs of survival. Star Citizen itself, you know, the multiplayer circle jerk, still performs, plays, and feels like an overpaid asset flip. Let me showcase you what I mean by this. Yeah, you can literally just do this. Yep. Come on. You're not dead yet. Now, there we go. Now you're dead. And everyone's dead. But I guess my hypercritical ketamine-addicted horse brain face just wants some goddamn consistency still. And like asking Americans not to put cheese on everything, it's just too much to ask. So, okay, I've looked at Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, and all that's left now is Star Citizen. Is it worth checking out or returning for 2024? Or is it like the murder rate in Brazil? Same old story. So, before we jump into the new stuff, first, like your favorite ex-partner, let's dig up the past and use it against you. Within the last few months, Star Citizen's been rather calm, if you will. Even now, looking back, sure, some interesting things did happen, like Arena Commander both change in visuals and functions, even adding experimental Master Mode's rework for combat as a playable game mode and a few other ones. And sure, all of it is a nice addition, don't get me wrong, but it's notably overshadowed by that Master Mode's experiment. Hell, they even added the motherfucking tank minigame, and that's not enough to derail the interest in the spacey ships. But no, seriously, Star Citizen is actually selling those tanks for real money. They cost about as 2 full-priced and finished games. Fuck me. But Master Modes. This is a change in an attempt to introduce an actual balancing and game design for spaceship combat. And most combat players hate it. Yep. Another interesting thing implemented in Star Citizen last year was the persistent trash placement. Basically, developers want the items in the game to retain their positions and not despawn, at least the more notable ones, for as long as time as possible, you know, hence the persistent forever thing. But, like building a garden shed, the idea to have an item drop on a planet and then, after years, you can return and collect it even, on paper sounds cool. However, just like every other dad project with zero experience, it pretty much turns into a needless showboating just for the sake of it. And yet I bet some furious masturbinators in the comments will tell you how actually useful it is for the game-changing tech. Ooh, so by all means embarrass yourselves. Or me. What this hypercritical asshole, I mean casual Latvian, is asking is a goddamn basics. For the last year or so I booted up Star Citizen numerous times across most if not all updates, and when I'm met with inconsistent framerate and physics that resemble Skyrim when you're playing it anything above 60 FPS, and AI that's less capable than modern Russian military, all the while still enjoying the quality 30k server hamster mass suicides, I can't but to ask, why? Why do we need another new game feature when half of the old ones aren't finished and the other half are in the concept phase? Why do we need another ship when you only barely started scratching the word combat game design? Oh, right, yeah, how could I forget, the ever-expanding digital storefront. Well, hey, if nothing else, this is the most finished and updated part, so at least one thing in Star Citizen has been consistent. However, Squadron 42 was showcased late last year, and for showcase purposes, it certainly, even to my dumbass, looked rather pretty cool. Now notice that I didn't say good. Yes, that's right, Squadron 42 is the single-player companion to Star Citizen, thanks to which Chris Roberts is able to rub elbows with the Hollywood elite once more, and maybe even one day release a game version of Wing Commander the movie. Well, at least that'll be the very first finished thing that CIG releases from its cum dumpster of a project. Okay, I'm getting really mean, let's try it again. The things they showcased for Squadron were actually pretty neat, for a video. See, I have this kind of a rule for video games, especially tactical shooters, since 2010. The better, more animation heavy and detailed it may look, the more janky and cumbersome it will be to play. And sure, while it's not a 100% perfect rule, Escape from Tarkov is the really only exception, so it's still a 99% rule to this day. And I would like to add Squadron 42 to a list of exceptions, successes, but until the day we actually get to play it, which likely is no less than a year from now, I'll keep my skeptically risen eyebrow. So, whether Squadron is good or bad, this is one interesting project to follow. And of course, sure, we are all benefiting mostly, if it succeeds. So, till we actually get to see a release date, I won't be putting any eggs in any kinds of baskets, and like a horny voyeur, I'll be observing it from my dark corner of the internets. So then, if Squadron 42 is something that only Chris Roberts gives a fuck about, how about the thing that everyone else actually cares for? Star Citizen, the multiplayer portion of this fuckfest of a pay-to-win crowdfunding project. Well, like an amateur chef trying to salvage a burnt 10-course meal by tactical annihilation level bombardment of garlic, information about Star Citizen tends to be oversaturated, to a point that you wonder if CIG is just a YouTube channel first and video game developers second. Needless waffling attempts to get a good answer out of Chris whenever he seldom appears on screen and is not scripted, or careful detailing on something utterly pointless like a fucking sandwich design or something, when next week everything mentioned still gets scrapped anyhow. This kind of is a trend I've seen this project employ over the years, and the only real thing that can be trusted is released content for the test server. But even so, let's see what maybe we have been promised and can expect in somewhat near future. So then, first off, like I mentioned before, the UI is getting a Botox injection. See, trickle-down economy works like Ronnie McDonnie Reagan once said, right? Coming from Squadron 42, the new UI in all aspects is expected someday soonish, I guess. But is it any good? Well, actually yes, or at least that's what they tell us, but I'll agree. Even from visual standpoint, it most likely will improve the experience, even inventory management, though it still looks like shit and will probably be shit. Because the inventory system is shit! I mean, seriously, how hard is it for multi-million-dollar games to design a working UI and it not taking 10 years? Goddamn Stalker released in 2007 and it was okay. Not great, but it was fine. How hard is it to just copy that? Anyways, what's more important is that finally, someday, we'll see an updated star map. This malignant pile of afterbirth looking functioning piece of UI is possibly the most despised and hated thing in the whole project. Fuck the $48,000 mega ship pack, even that's not looked at with such disgust. No, it's the only navigation tool the Star Citizen has and legitimately deserves punishment of death penalty by pulling its heart through its asshole. Consistently breaking and utterly refusing to work as if it's fucking French, that's the current star map for the past 5 years or more. To this day, I question the sanity of the poor designer who made this star map and was told, "Nah, we need more polygons on some random ship, you got no time to fix or improve the star map, we need this pixel green!" So, yeah, I can't wait for the day this cancer baby gets body slammed into the trash finally. Right then, moving on. There are some Arena Commander changes coming with more minigames and so on, but really there's only one thing that everyone gives a fuck about: the Master Modes. So, in short, Star Citizen intends to have multiple flight modes as its game design. Navigation mode that allows your ship to go really fast, but literally do nothing else. Combat mode that completely throttles the max speed, but allows you to use the weapons, and some middle workhorse mode for utility. Problem with this design idea might already be clear by the sheer number of the modes. However, even a bigger problem is the implementation of the current combat mode. Like casual plebeian with the crooked fingers, I grabbed the joystick of my ship and started casually blasting. It felt pretty good. No longer ships whiz by each other in the most retarded jousting fashion as if they're trying to play the world's most idiotic game of chicken. Now, even the dipstick like me can join the fray and get in a few shots before I get my inevitable asshole served up by a sweaty space dad spending his pensioner's days blasting kids like me. However, after I stopped to think about it for a moment, listened in on the more knowledgeable PvP players, I gotta agree. The current version of Master Mode slows down ships so draconically that it turns Star Citizen combat into incredibly arcadey, special needs version of peasant bumper cars. The skill ceiling has been dropped so low that literally only toddlers can't reach it. And a major concern for this change is complete eradication of combat skill element if left unchanged when this mode goes into full effect for the whole game later this year. Even the casual plebeian like myself can tell that this is only going to please the newcomers or the decrepit space dads with no interest in getting good. Though considering that the project is funded by most of them, I don't know, maybe that's a good thing, right? But an objectively better game, this will not make. In fact, I recommend checking out Avenger 1, who recently did a pretty cool summary of the faults of this mode and in-depth detail about it. Oh, and while I'm at it, there's also a few more new things coming to Star Citizen that are fundamentally inconsequential, but at least if you want to know more about them or the roadmap, I do recommend Space Tomato, who covered all of it recently as well. But if there is one thing you can take away from what's coming for Star Citizen this year, well, not much until Chris Roberts can actually finish pinching off the single-player turd of a Wing Commander remake. Hey Chris, shit or get off the pot! So then, the big question, is Star Citizen even worth buying into or reinstalling if you already have the crippling $40,000 debt? Well, I'm as picky of an asshole as can be, and I can barely tolerate the unoptimized stuttery bullshit of whatever counts as a finished and released games these days. So, what do you think I see in the perpetual alpha project that masquerades as a real game? Ha! You're not a real game, stop pretending! But does a game really have to be called finished or full release to be considered as a good one? Well, of course not. Well, if you didn't know, Warframe is still in beta. Yes, you heard me right. I mean, okay, fine, it's technically for tax purposes in Canada, woo, but it's technically beta to this day, and for me, it's one of the better games out there today. So in my head, when I hear the words alpha, beta, early access, or whatever, all of it has lost meaning. So thanks, games industry, you managed to ruin another standard from the real software development. Congratulations! But where does that leave us with Star Citizen then? Admittedly, it does excel in many aspects that entice people to check it out. Most of all, of course, the visual spectacle and the hyper-polygon mess that is the exemplary art department's excretions. You want spacey ships? Well, Star Citizen probably, well, actually no, come to think of it, most definitely has the best-looking spaceships in all of gaming. And that's me saying it. Even if some of them make as much sense as using stapler for surgical scar stitching. And these ships certainly are the central focal point. A very focal point. Through implied gameplay roles and implied functions of these floating over-designed space barges, Star Citizen keeps people's interest with the hype and promises, and loads of it. All the while backing it up with actual 3D models that you can, at least most of the time, run around with your character in a semi-working world, while these implied features and gameplay get implemented over time, or get silently scrapped so no one notices. Even that said, it's nice to see Star Citizen implement not just the typical space sim disciplines of gameplay like combat and trading, but also going beyond and branch out into first-person focused gameplay that I myself am most fond of. Mining is also a good example of this. Either you can do it with your space fleet, well, it doesn't pay that well, but regardless, or you can do it with your ship, and functions for both are made rather well. And hell, even some half-baked ideas that exist right now and are not exactly complete still spark some potential if they are finished, such as, for example, racing. And though this hypercritical Latvian likes to remind how unfinished every basic gameplay mechanic, like, for example, trading, is, there is no denying that there is genuine effort being put forth in attempts to complete something? Well, that is until Chris Roberts comes up with another idea and changes a pixel from green to blue, and everyone has to rush to help out Squadron 42 again. Publicly, with Star Citizen's approach to development, even if they appear to be open and showcase what they're working on, the inescapable reality still persists. Whatever the game or gameplay there is in the currently accessible test server, or what they call the alpha version persistent universe, it's excessively buggy and broken to a point that I've simply refused to call Star Citizen a real game for the past years. Have the quality Star Citizen stuff. Of course, there's the built-in defense of, bro, it's just an alpha, or it's just a test server, it's a vertical slice. First off, yeah, no. The so-called live universe alpha has gone from a hangar that was the showroom, sort of a vertical slice, but a persistent universe? No, that's a live developed game version. That's no longer a vertical slice at all. And second, we already talked about the alpha, beta, or hell, even PMS being slapped onto a game and calling it unfinished or something. No, it doesn't matter. It's lost all meaning today. But it doesn't mean I don't recognize it as unfinished. But despite my continuous critique of Star Citizen's unfinished state, the lack of base mechanic, coding, feature finished state, and so much more, let alone the pay-to-win nature of the whole pledge store and sacrifices CIG made to the game design and fair gameplay just to continue funding this blazing hype train, well, the train is still on the rails, well, at least for now. Whether it will turn into a train wreck or successfully come into station with applause, that's still yet to be seen. And that's where I stand. On the technical scale, I question the delivered results and time it has taken. I mean, hell, it's been 10 years since the fucking Kickstarter, about 8 to 9 since the first alpha, and whatever playable game there is, it's still broken and performs very poorly. But I also see the hopes and dreams of the project. The few things that they've delivered, while still questionable, do at least show they're working on it, and not just pulling the day before. So to those weirdos out there calling it a scam citizen, yeah, I think you've not seen a real scam, I guess. Star Citizen certainly is not that. It is questionable, but not that. And I am personally interested to see what will happen, how it will all turn out, and whether we can learn from it. Still, I will observe the project as it goes on, and that's my stance. It's still being made, but is it worth taking seriously as a game? Yeah, well, no, not at least yet. And so, would I recommend picking up one of those packages and playing it as a real game? Fuck no! However, if you want to observe the project as it progresses, it is worth returning to if you already have bought into it. After all, every few months they do add something to it, though usually Star Citizen tends to run like complete ass afterwards and something new is broken. But that's kinda the beauty. You pop in, check out what's new, and then forget about it till the next update. Yay, sunk cost. But as for those who haven't purchased the package to access it, well, it is genuinely nice to see that CIG is organizing free-to-play weekends once in a while for one of those big events that they do. So keeping an eye on what the next big event might be will give you a chance to, without no cost to your own wallet, to jump in and look at this dumpster fire yourself. And maybe you can spot a glint of gold in it. You know, there are some actually good things in Star Citizen, despite what some weirdos may think of me. I'm not quite that heartless after all as well. And that's Star Citizen. Till Squadron 42 releases, likely sometime in 2025, if the winds are favorable, not much is gonna happen to the Star Citizen, you know, the multiplayer part. Except for maybe pumping the pledge store, of course, and likely the UI redesign coming out sometime this year, which personally I can't wait for. And of course the combat design implementation being the biggest ones. But as it's looking for that one, unless CIG actually listens to knowledgeable players, it might just go very poorly for them. Either way, it is worth keeping an eye on Star Citizen. I sure will, and I'll let you know if anything interesting happens. So, do subscribe. Of course, do check out the Patreon links down below if you want to support what I do and smack this dead horse and all that stuff. Well, I guess, I don't know. How do I end the video? Oh crap!